Right. Good afternoon, everybody. You're very welcome to our session on the rollout of EV charging infrastructure and associated schemes. So I think you'll find it a very interesting session. We've got some great speakers lined up for you. And you're going to walk away here. You'll know all of the grants that are available, and you'll know the direction and the key priorities and issues we're facing after this session. Okay. So the three speakers, myself, Graham Brennan. So I'm the program manager for EV infrastructure in SCAI. So I'm going to talk mainly about the home charging and the origin charging, okay? The other charging, the public charging and the en route charging, I'm not going to address that so much. I'll just mention that the government has launched its EV charging strategy today. So you can go online and download it, and you'll see much more information there on that aspect of it. Okay, so I'm going to focus mainly on home charging and the SEI schemes that we have available, okay? The other speaker is Derek Riley. He runs the EV Review Ireland website on YouTube, and he's going to take the consumer's perspective and give you a little bit of information on that. And then lastly, we'll have John Smith from Post. So if you want to know how to electrify your fleet and the challenges in getting your workers behind and into this, listen to John. And then we'll have a Q&A session at the end of it, okay? So let's just talk about the what's happening with the car market at the moment, the EV market. So at the bottom we have, on the bottom here we have the year, and you can see here the number of vehicles that were registered each year, okay? The green and the pink, they're the new PHEVs. So you can see here, these are the new BEVs and the new FEVs that were registered each year, and they got grant support from SEAI, okay? The gray ones here, these are the imported used cars that came into the market. So you can see we've been making great progress. And look at this last year, the new sales grew by 130%. So that's a massive drive. Overall, if we take the imports as well, overall, this represented about 13% of all registrations last year, okay? So far this year, for the first 2 months, comparing the previous year's 2 months, we're showing about 33% growth, okay? And a reduction there in the imports. And after Brexit, we would have expected the imports to start shrinking. But so far they're doing okay. You can see that we had probably the same volume of imports this year versus the previous year, that year. But as a percentage, you can see they're declining, right? So that's interesting. So we're going, it's going quite well. And at the moment this year, these vehicles here represent about 18% of all registrations so far. So we've gone from about 13% of registrations to 18%. So things are picking up. So where are we going? What's our target? So this is the cumulative number of EVs that we have to deliver. You can see when we reach 2030, we're expected to have 845,000 EVs on the road, okay? This orange line shows you what percentage of registrations we expect to have as EVs. And so if we look here, so we have, as I said, about 13% last year. We have 50,000 EVs on the road. So far, so good. We're doing quite well so far. But look what's coming ahead of us here, this massive ramp up. So as I said, how much infrastructure is going to be required? Look at the government's EV strategy to see what they're planning to do. And also, what's going to happen when we reach 2030? There's a ban on petrol and diesel cars after 2030. So will we see a total slump in petrol and diesel car sales? Who wants to buy a car that's about to be obsolete in some way, you know? So we might see a bit of a choking of supply as we get towards that. So these are all factors we've got to think about. So I just want to talk about the home charger scheme first. So this is our main subsidy scheme that we have, all right? So SEI gives 600 euros per home charger installed. The total cost of a home charger is about 1,200, all right? And this scheme is only open to houses that have their own off-street parking, okay? If you have to park next to the house and use the domestic supply of the house, okay? I'll just mention this. The supply wiring That 1200 assumes that the supply wiring is adequate for the house, okay? If you've got to upgrade the supply wiring, okay, we call this, these are called the meter tails. So this is the ESP connection to your home, and this is the supply line going into the meter, and this is the supply line to your house. These need to be 16 millimeters squared. For houses that were built before 1996, they tend to be 10 millimeters squared. So you've got to get your house assessed. Now, if that needs to be upgraded, you could be between 200 and 300 euro, 200 and 500 euros to get this lot upgraded. So that's something we're looking at. You'll hear more from us in the future about this question or this aspect, okay? Progress, so last year we gave out 8,000 grants. This year we expect to give out about 16,000 grants. So you can imagine a lot of our emphasis is getting our programs ready to handle that volume of applications. And you can imagine each of these people here, you know, from this you're going to get customers with questions coming back to SEAI. We've got to deal with them. They've got to send in evidence. We work with Safe Electric. They validate the installation for us. It's a very successful relationship. So of course, this keeps us very busy here. So a lot of our activity is around addressing and keeping those grants flowing. Let me see. I want to mention this. As of mid-2022, we're only going to be allowing or providing support to smart chargers, okay? So what do we mean by a smart charger? It must be able to send and receive data from an external source. So for instance, demand management system, you could be measuring the supply to the house. It has to react to that data and reduce the demand of the car. It has to be able to modify the rate of charge for the car in response to any external signals. It has to be able to monitor and report the consumption of that charger as well, okay? So we've already opened up a section on our website. So if you're supplying chargers, you can begin registering your chargers now and follow the criteria and produce evidence that your product meets that criteria. That's open now. So you go to SEAI's EEE register, and there's a new category called SEAI Grants Eligible EV Chargers. So we'll have more to say with the suppliers in a short while on that as well, okay? So just making that aware. It won't really become implemented until the middle of this year, we suspect, okay? So why are we doing it? Because the number of EVs, we can't have everybody arriving in at 6 o'clock and charging in at the same time and creating a spike on the grid. We also have to be able to match all the available EV load with the available wind power that's out there at nighttime. So we have to be able to do those two things. Here we go. So our other two schemes, the first one is the apartment scheme. So this scheme, we expect it to launch in April, okay? The indicative support is up to 80%. So we're providing support for the installation of a charging network in the apartment block and support for the chargers for each individual car. So the money will be given to, the eligible applicants will be owner management companies, local authorities, approved housing bodies, build-to-rent commercial landlords as well. They can all apply to that scheme. We're going to use a register of charge point operators. So if you're an OMC, you must team up with a charge point operator, and together you form an application to us and we support it. We'll then validate who these charge point operators are, because we're more concerned that someone is there to keep the scheme running for the users of that scheme. It's not just about providing money for the infrastructure and the wires. Who's going to run it when it's finished? So we'll have more to say next month on that scheme, okay? And then the last scheme I'm going to mention is the public residential charger scheme. So this is, as I said, most of SEI's funding is addressing the origin or the home charging. 80% of charging is done in the home. So mostly our schemes are addressing that. So this last one was intended to address people who use on-street parking and have to charge the vehicle on the street. That's local authority land, so the local authority has to install the charger. So far we opened the scheme in 2019. We had 4 applications in. These are in non-profitable, they're not very profitable areas. the commercial developers of these, they want to put them in petrol stations and places like that. They want to put in fast chargers where they can make more money off them. They don't want to put a charger into a public street where someone is going to sit there and charge their vehicle overnight. And then, it's very hard to generate a big revenue. So they need some subsidies. So at the moment, local authorities are reluctant as well. They don't want to own the infrastructure and they don't want to operate the infrastructure afterwards. So a lot of difficulty getting that scheme and getting people. But yet, there's plenty of scope for innovation, right? You can see here, this is an on-street charger here. You perhaps shouldn't be on the curb, but we'll say nothing about that for the minute. But look at this, they've got some kind of an arm that's been rigged up there. So you're going to see a lot of that kind of innovation. And there could be a multitude of solutions applicable to different on-street locations. So there's lots of scope for development there. So just to finish up, I have 2 slides. And the first one is just to mention the other SCI schemes that are available. Okay, so we have, of course, the SCI EV grant scheme. We only provide grant supports for the purchase of battery electric vehicles, BEVs, as long as the price doesn't exceed 50,000 euros for the vehicle, okay? We give 5,000 euro for a private car. We give 3,800 for a commercial vehicle, N1 commercial vehicle. The next thing I want to mention is our EV comparison tool. So you can actually go onto our website, you can call up any 2 cars that you like and compare them. It'll tell you the price, the list price of the car, it'll tell you the annual energy cost, and it'll tell you the electric range. So you can compare EV with EV or EVs with ICE cars or whatever you like. So it's a great tool, and we've got access to a big database of cars there. The other scheme is the accelerated capital allowance. So if you're a company who's entitled to claim allowances, accelerated capital allowances are available. It means all of the allowances given to you in 1 year instead of spread over 8 years. It's available for EVs and chargers. And then we're also working on an SCI Fleet trial, but that's for later on in the year, okay? And then my last slide. The other important things to mention, there's the vehicle registration tax. That's the main mechanism to incentivize the purchase of EVs, okay, or clean vehicles. The VRT rate was dropped from 14% down to 7%. So most EVs, battery electrics and plug-in hybrids qualify for that lower 7% rate, which is excellent. And then also for a BEV, there's additional support. You get actual relief from the VRT you're due of up to about 5,000 euros. There's also a discount on the tolls. If you have an EV, you can get up to 50% off the price of your tolls, and that's available for private vehicles or goods vehicles. There's also relief for benefit in kind. It's for BEVs only, and it's available for the first 50,000 euro price of the vehicle, and it's dropping each year down to 10,000 finally in 2025. And then finally, I'll just mention this scheme as well. Our colleagues in Transport Infrastructure Ireland, they have this alternatively fueled heavy-duty vehicle purchase grant scheme, and you'll get 40 to 60% discount off the price difference. So whatever the price difference is between a diesel truck versus an electric truck, they'll give you 40 to 60% of that, depending on the size of your business. And it's available for all those types, BEVs, FEVs, hydrogen, or natural gas. Okay, so listen, that's enough for me for the moment. You can get in touch with me on LinkedIn there if you want to follow some of the things I publish. I'll hand over to the next speaker, and I'll ask each speaker to just introduce themselves briefly. All right, thank you.
Afternoon, everybody. Afternoon, everybody. Just going to pull up my slides. So my name is Derek Riley, and I am the founder of EV Review Ireland, which is a YouTube channel, but I've been reviewing electric vehicles since 2019 in a written form, and then a lot of brands wanted video content, so I set up EV Review Ireland. So if you're interested in electric vehicles, it'd be great if you could go along to it. And I don't just review cars, it's also vans. I've got an e-expert next week, e-bikes, etc., etc. So that's one half of the business, and then of what I do outside of work. And then in work, I'm working with a company called Nevo, which is a new website that will be launched soon, the next 4 weeks, we hope, where it'll be a one-stop shop for individuals or businesses that are thinking about going electric and answering all the questions. So we're really excited about the Nevo proposition coming down the line. Everybody is excited about this kind of stuff. So this was me in Frankfurt on Monday, and that is the new Kia EV9, 6 or 7 seater, fully electric vehicle, 550 kilometers. It looks massive there, but it's actually a small bit shorter than a Volvo XC90. So it's actually not that big. But this is built on a dedicated electric platform, skateboard, batteries in the bottom, between the 4 wheels, and then you can have a different shell on the top of it. So this is based on the same platform as the Kia EV6, which if you're into electric vehicles, you will know is one of the best-selling electric vehicles so far this year. So there's all of this kind of stuff going on, but what excites me the most is really the likes of more standard and traditional vehicles coming to the market. And this was yesterday. You're probably looking at the registration plate wondering what county is P, and there isn't one. This is the Polestar 2 that was launched yesterday in Ireland. This is originally a subdivision of the Volvo brand, but is now its own entity. Geely Holdings, which are based out of China, is actually the owners of Volvo and Polestar now. They also have Elise and the London Taxi Company, etc. So this is a brand new brand, never before in Ireland, launched yesterday. And this is what we're going to start to see more and more of. Chinese brands that are coming to Ireland, not the Chinese, lots of different manufacturers in lots of different countries, coming to Ireland and offering a model to consumer that's different to everything else. Very similar to the Tesla model, this will have one destination showroom in Sandyford. You'll order online. When you walk into the showroom, or the destination as they call it, the salespeople aren't on commission. They're there to educate you. They are there to show you all the facts and features, and whether you buy it or not, it's up to yourself. They're not there to hard sell you into buying a car. So that's the Polestar 2, and that review came out this morning. And then I also review stuff like this. This is the Higer Azure and the Higer Steed, fully electric buses. The one on the right is actually in Portlaoise at the moment, doing a local link service around the town and out into the country. And the larger Azure isn't on the fleet yet in Ireland, but in other markets they have electric buses. So what we're looking to see is more public transportation go electric as well. That has connotations, or that has repercussions with regards to charging in the depots and having those grid connections, etc. This is what I'm driving next week, the Peugeot e-Expert, and if you're in business, you're probably looking at why are electric vans more expensive than the regular combustion engine vehicles, but what we have to start looking at is that total cost of ownership. And so with my channel and with the website, we'll be able to show you where you're going to save. There is supports, like Graham was talking about, depending on the size of the vehicle, etc. But I get as excited about this as I do about the one in the first picture with the EV9, because these are on the road all day, every day. These are the ones that are in our towns and villages that are actually out and about, earning money, and they have to be reliable as well, not just a passenger vehicle. I'm currently learning how to ride a motorcycle because this is the future as well. This is Egencia, an Italian brand, and as you can see, he is charging on a fast charger. So that will take a fast charge, a lot of electricity into its battery pack, but you're going to see a lot more two-wheel electric vehicles and micro-mobility moving around the place with regards to the electric revolution that's already here. Wireless charging. Volvo are trialling it in Gothenburg at the moment, so these are Volvo XC40s. All you have to do is park over the spot and it will charge from the ground up, no cables. We're getting that lazy now, we won't even plug the cable in. You literally have to drive over it. Efficiency, you're probably looking at 95% as efficient as plugging in. The question has been asked, if a dog or cat goes in underneath the car, what will happen? And I'm told that everything's going to be okay, nothing happens. But technology like this, wireless charging, etc., is the future, potentially, depending on the use case. There are some taxi ranks in the United Kingdom, in Coventry, that are trialling it as well. And then you've got the likes of the Vegas Loop, as it's called. I was there a couple of weeks ago, and this is a Tesla company where they bore the tunnel for you and then they put their cars into it. Because they're electric cars, there's no gas, there's no emissions coming from the vehicle. And this is a shuttle service around the Las Vegas Convention Center, 1.2 miles of a tunnel. But to beat traffic, this is where Elon Musk thinks we should go down rather than up in flying cars. So it was great to experience that as well. But just something different, and when you're using an electric vehicle, where you can go. It used to be a case where range anxiety was a thing, I don't have a big enough battery to get me where I want to go. But I don't like using that terminology, and with batteries so big nowadays in electric vehicles, it's not range anxiety that people have the problem with anymore, it's charger anxiety. Is the charger going to be free? Is the charger working? And this is a Tesla supercharger in California at the weekends in America, Thanksgiving and Christmas, where there are lines out the door. We won't have that really in Ireland because we're able to charge at home and the country is big enough for a typical electric car battery, but in the US they do a lot of larger road trips. But it is definitely a concern for electric car drivers, electric vehicle owners, that will that charger be available, etc., etc. So working on that, NEVO will be looking into this space as well. But as Graham was saying, the Department of Transport released their EV strategy today, so we're looking forward to seeing more hubs, etc., going out and about there. So that's been me. I'll be here on the panel afterwards. If you're interested in electric vehicles, I'd appreciate if you follow me on YouTube and on social media. And now I'll hand over to the next speaker. Thank you very much.
Hello everybody, my name is John Smith and I'm the Sustainable Infrastructure and Facility Manager for Unpost. So it was my role to support Unpost and provide the infrastructure to support our fleet, to support our emissions, our zero emissions policy on our fleet. So, sorry, So maybe just as we're trying to get up the slides, is just to give a feel for what Unpost does. I know most of us here are Irish, and there's an assumption that you know what Unpost is and what we do. But to give you a kind of size and scope for Unpost, we deliver to 2.2 million address points every day. Our KPI is to do a 98% next day delivery. So if you post something today, we want to make sure it gets there tomorrow. We've 1.7 million post office customers every week across 900 post offices. We've over 9,000 employees, and we've 3 mail centres, and I think it's 113 DSUs, or delivery depots, I think, but we call them delivery service units. Sustainability is at the core of what we're trying to achieve. And we've been working on our sustainability initiative since 2009, when it was just about climate and KPIs and carbon. And what we've done is, since 2009, we've centred our sustainable initiative around UN Sustainable Development Goals in conjunction with our peers in Europe. And the 5 goals we've focused on are decent work and economic growth, sustainable cities and communities, industry, innovation and infrastructure, and responsible consumption and production, and then obviously climate action. So you can see that lives that, and this is the link. This is the link to our 2020 report, and the 2021 report is almost hot off the presses, and it's due for release at the end of this month, or the end of April, early May. I think we have a date agreed, but it's just, I don't want to commit to it because we've other people to sign off on it yet. So our commitments for climate action is to act for the common good and to prove the quality of life for people in Ireland now and for generations to come. We're a long time around on Post. Our tradition goes right back to the 1800s, but it's since 1984 we moved from the Department of Transport into Unpost. And our commitment then is, our vision is to return everything back to when we started in 1984. But in dealing with that kind of long-term strategic commitment, our key commitments is a 50% reduction in our carbon emissions by 2025 and to be net zero by 2030. And in support of those targets, our step zones was we had emission-free deliveries in all Irish cities by the end of 21. So even Kilkenny, which I know some of you here, well, technically is not a city, but even Kilkenny is included in that list. So we've the 5 Irish cities and Kilkenny, and we've delivered carbon emission deliveries to those cities. You can read again in our annual sustainability report about the other commitments. Sorry. So our fleet, just to give a feel for the size for our fleet we have about 4,000 vehicles in total in our fleet, of which 1,000 of them are electric vehicles. I'll give you the exact number, and there was 2 write-offs this year, but I won't bore you to that level of detail. We have 140 e-trikes, and we've Ireland's first e-trucks with the 7.5-ton Fuso trucks. With the, I think it's on show in inside there. We've the largest charging private network in Ireland. We've 1,300 chargers, slightly under 1,200 in terms of our post offices, and a number that is at private charging. So we've just over 1,300 chargers, and we've one of the largest electric fleets in Europe. So we're very proud to be the first postal operator to achieve zero emission delivery status in its capital city. So we were the first to achieve that in the world, and the first to cover all its cities in its country. Again, we think it's a very big achievement. So the challenges for Unpost, the big challenges that we had initially when we started out this project was to look at both infrastructure, and the 2 areas that we looked at in infrastructure was the challenge on space, because our business was built around a mail delivery model. So for example, I'm from Artane. Harmonstown is our local DSU. There's only 3 parking spaces in Harmonstown, so that limits us in some cases where we could roll out the EVs to. And the second one was then to look at the electrical infrastructure. So if you notice that we started talking about 2009, so we started talking about 2009, it was all about reducing MIC, cutting back on MIC, making sure that the load matched the building load, and then when we were building and renovating properties between 2009 and today, was to make sure that the engineers didn't go mad and over-engineer more cable and cable size into it. So that meant we had to go back out and look at our electrical infrastructure. So that was quite a challenge, and also our space infrastructure. So our strategy was to have 1 charger per vehicle and to maximise our vehicle charging at night. So we would avail the most of night rate electricity. So that's was our charging structure. So the cost of availability. So the electric fleet, EVs, I think statistically they're about €7,000 more expensive than the normal ICE or the diesel engine vehicle. So that's quite a challenge. And then there's also the installation cost. So the charger costs about €2,000, and then there's a further installation cost to make those chargers work. So that's quite a considerable challenge in terms of the financing of them. However, the offsets on this is, in terms of the plus side, is that you normally get a longer life expectancy out of an EV. You've reduced maintenance costs on EVs because there's less running parts, there's less moving parts within the engine, so those costs should be reduced. And that we would expect the resale costs, we're thinking it's going to be 25 or to 50% better on resale. So we expect to get a second-hand value, an improved second-hand value on them. So we think, but obviously then there's the fuel costs now maybe helping out us in there. But let's say before the war in the Ukraine, the fuel costs was about a quarter per kilowatt. There was a quarter of the kilowatt DSB per kilowatt was about 4 times more expensive for the ICE engine than the EVs. So there was a cost reduction on it. Sorry, the important thing, the other thing that we had to look at this when we were rolling it out was the management of our charging network. The management of our charging network was critical. When we put the vehicles in place, we had an ESB supply which is determined by your MIC. So we realised that we had 24 hours capability of that MIC. We wanted to maximise nighttime electricity, so that was important to us. But we didn't want to go mad putting in more infrastructure, more cabling. So we have to manage the charging and the managing of that charging times to try and maximise that night rate electricity. So we have a management system doing that management for us. So that was a key infrastructure that we've had to put in. Range and capability. I know in terms of, I think, domestically on the cars, the range is very good, but on the vans, and particularly with our model of delivery, we'd have up to 35, 40 stops per day. So it's quite a lot of stopping and starting, and we found that range was under stress. So we'd range capability issues in terms of that. We'd also summer and winter capabilities, because in winter the battery doesn't perform as well as it would do in the summer. And then the final thing is the guys like to be warm when they're driving the vans, so they run the heating in the vans. So that's obviously another deterrent to range in the winter. Our colleagues in Switzerland got the bright idea that they'd give the guys warm weather clothing when they were driving the vans in Switzerland, but I don't think our guys would take kindly to that. It doesn't. With all this going in place, training was most important. So before anybody was allowed to drive an EV, they were put through a training program to show them how to organise and maximise the efficiency of the van and its range. So the training was critical. There's eco-driving buttons. They're not supposed to be speeding, so you're not supposed to send one of these down 120 kilometres down a motorway. It will use the battery up. So they got a considerable amount of training and reinforced training to make sure that they were driving the van at its most economic and its best. And the challenges to us is, we'll just put Rosie and Keith, we'll talk for a few minutes just to talk you through what was their experiences, and we have a piece for that here now.
So I'm Keith Lally. I'm 12 years and I'm post now.
Yeah, so my name is Rosie. I've been a postie for the last year and a half. I started out on the bike, and then with the pandemic we got more and more packets and parcels. So at some point, you can't have 50 packets and parcels on your bike. So they changed over to vans.
Just coming in, and people are more happy to see it in the electric vans. They know you're trying to make a change. You know that you're trying to do things better for the environment and for the people around, and they're actually a lot more comfortable to drive, and a lot easier to drive.
So knowing that I'm not necessarily kind of having a negative impact on the environment is very positive. So at least zero emissions, zero noise pollution. I deliver in a very quiet residential area, and that's great because I drive in and I'm not necessarily waking up the people, or you know what I mean. So that's really helpful.
Yeah, so the community that we serve day in, day out, they're so happy to see us in the EV vans, and they know we're trying to make a change, and I think that's impacting on them. And as a worker, as I'm supposed to see that happening, it's made me so proud, and it helps you come to work in the morning and wake up at 5:30.
I work in an area with a lot of kids, so people have said to me, actually it's great because my kids' future, in a way is being looked after by your company.
Oh, it's great. It's great to feel like that as a company that I work for. We're trying to make a change. We're trying to be positive impact on the environment.
And Post is literally present in every single community. We go to every single house in this country. So if we can make that community safer, but also better in terms of the air quality or less noise, then that's really positive.
So kind of into what's next for Unpost and EVs and sustainability in terms of our fleet. So if you know the difficulty we have is with range and etc. But we believe that electric vehicles, in terms of the smaller vans, is a fixed. It's going to be electric. That's what we would figure. But in addition we've about 200 HGVs and trucks that we would operate. So what are we going to do with those? They're running at they consume about 8,000 tons of CO2, so they're about a third of our CO2 commitment in terms of overall emissions and energy. So we've looked at a number of options. We would look at where the market is going, etc., etc. I'll talk to you a bit about some of the engagement we've done on that in the next slide. But in essence, we're looking to see what direction is the market going to take. So we were left with a choice of, the market doesn't really have a defined jump in terms of this type of vehicle. The conversation is around electric, hydrogen, and hydrogen. The infrastructure is an issue on the hydrogen. I don't think we've many hydrogen pumps in the country. I think it's at zero. I think people are getting it off one, is it? One. So we've one fueling point, and I think it's in BOC gases. So it's not exactly done emission free. So there's quite a stress on that. So exactly where is this going to go? So what we looked at, and we identified that there was a gap here. The interim solution to us was HGV. So in September 21, we started a trial on the HGVs, HVO, hydro-treated vegetable oil in Galway. So we started using hydro-treated vegetable oil for our fleet in Galway. And the initial results have been very, very good. It's 1-for-1 with diesel. We couldn't believe it, but because we thought it was going to be, obviously an engine that's made for diesel is not going to be as efficient as that for another product. But it was and it has been. That's what the results are showing. We would feel maybe there might be a slight variance because very much the eye is on the results and the performance of this, but it's essentially 1-for-1. And so what we've done is we've retrofitted a 25,000 litre tank and a diesel pump. So it's the first time I was congratulated for not keeping up with the business and, let's say, basically taking it out and dumping it. So we were able to use the tank and the pumps that were still left behind and still left over. And since September, we've about 120,000 kilometres travelled. The average is about 25 litres per 100 kilometres. And we've seen a 92% reduction in carbon emissions in that period of time. Somewhere around 250, 300 tonnes of carbon saved. I know SEI measures in kilowatts, so that's still, but we also report a lot of our emissions in carbon. So we're very, very happy. We've moved, that trial is being expanded due to various commitments down to Cork and Waterford. So we hope then to just double check the slight differences and variances in our fleet in those two offices. And then once we have that, then we have a decision to make where to go to next. So our next steps, so for Unpust, it's a very unusual position to be first mover in a lot of these projects. Normally we're the last to move, and innovation to us is copying what somebody else is doing. So we're now first mover in a lot of these initiatives. So what we've had to do is we have had to step forward and change a lot of our mindset. So part of this is to keep a watching brief and to be very aware of what's happening in the market. So we've joined, and I think we're the first company to join, first Irish logistics company in EV 100. We're members of the FTAI. We're chair of Post Europe's, their Green Mobility Forum. We're members of IPC, their Sustainable Measurement and Monitoring System Programme. We're on the senior executive of Hydrogen Ireland, and we're a vice chair in Alice on the thematic group. So we're very involved in trying to make sure that these decisions that we're making, being first mover, and particularly around the HGVs, is that we're going to be ready to go there first. So that's me, so thank you. Okay.
Seat there, John. So thanks to all our speakers for taking the time to be here and talk today. I'll open the floor. We have a few minutes for questions. So you can either throw your hand up and I'll try and hear, or you can use the microphones there in the middle. So listen, I just had a question, I guess. I'll start off just on the question of supply. Derek, what's your view on the supply? Are we going to get strangled on supply of vehicles? Yeah. I mean, there's been parts were being made in Ukraine. Those factories, God knows what's happened to them.
Yeah, so supply is going to be a huge issue. One, two. Yeah, here you go. Supply has been a huge issue. Those that want to buy EVs, unfortunately, depending on the brand, you might be waiting until next year. Manufacturers have been caught off guard with semiconductor issues, the wiring looms for Volkswagen Group out of the Ukraine. That production is starting to go up again. We've got Shanghai in China, where Teslas are coming out of. That's been shut down for a couple of days. So yeah, there's lots going on, but what we're seeing in the consumer side of things is people are willing to wait until the car that they're looking to buy is available. They're not buying an internal combustion engine instead of. They're holding on to it for another 6 months, or they're holding on to it for another year. So people are willing to wait for the car. They can see it's the future, and very much like you say, they don't want to buy a commodity that won't be as valuable a second-hand market down the line.
And one of the things I would say, you know, our licensing plate system, you know, as we get towards 2030, you're going to have these people say, oh, I'd love a 31-1 or 30-01.
Yeah.
We have that issue. And then on top of that, there's going to be this effective ban on the purchase of straight petrol and diesel vehicles, right? So even people are just going to, I'd imagine they're going to get a little bit anxious, and it's a big purchase. So that on its own could cause a bit of a slump, I think, in car sales.
Yeah, for sure. And as much as car sales are down, EV sales are up, and they're the fastest growing segment within the market. But with an electric vehicle, you have also, I was talking to somebody this morning on the way in, they're thinking about buying an electric car, and they said, I don't know what I buy now or wait until the next iteration of battery, and it's called the Osborne effect. You don't want to buy this thing because you know the next thing is coming down the line, be that a mobile phone or be that a laptop. And so people are saying, will I wait, will I wait?
Yeah.
But don't forget, Graham, and I don't think it's Graham's money, but the SEI grant isn't going to always be there, and the help, whether it's putting in the charger or buying the car, isn't always going to be there. So there is definitely advantages to being an early adopter. We're getting to the stage where it's going to be early mass market, but there will always be parts that will be maybe better technology, but with like EVs, you've got the over-the-air update capability as well. So the car or vehicle or van or whatever it may be is able to be better than the day you bought it, which is unthinkable for a combustion engine vehicle.
And to turn to yourself, John, we were chatting before the start of the event, and your drivers take the vehicles home. So they take the vans home and they charge them at home. How do you assist them in that regard, and how do you compensate them?
Yeah, we're running a trial on that to see how that would work. So what we're looking at is car charging at home, how to make it as efficient or as user-friendly as if you had a vehicle card. So you can imagine today, most of the postmen, let's say in diesel vans, go to a fueling station, they produce the card after fueling, and it gets paid for. There's no money coming in or interaction through their account, and it's very user-friendly and very easy to use. So we're working on a trial to see how we can do that. We're putting chargers into houses, and what we're looking at then seeing is that the person will be reimbursed on a weekly basis, so that at the end of the week they get reimbursed. So when the bill does arrive for them to pay the ESB bill or the electric bill, it's quite easy for them to do it, and they're not going to be out of pocket. So that's what we're hoping to achieve.
And I wanted to ask you, you know, people now are obsessed with getting everything delivered to the house, right? So the government strategy is to get people cycling and walking, get rid of the car, and you get them on the buses and all that stuff. And in the meantime, all of our stuff is moving around on the roads, being delivered to us. Amazon doing deliveries, you guys, Tesco's doing deliveries. What's the net effect? Is all of that pushing up congestion? Is it better use of it because we're all at work? We're not using the network at the morning and the evenings?
Well, exactly. European policy actually is to try and reduce that overall congestion, particularly around logistics and courier companies coming in. We're actually involved with a project with Dublin City Council called Project Senator, and the purpose of that project is to try and create, let's say, a control tower situation where the vehicles, if they're courier company vehicles going into city centre, that they're always full. So we're not transporting a lot of air around the city or a lot of empty vehicles. So we're working with Dublin City Council, and that project is supposed to be, well, it's due to be announced, but it's supposed to come to fruition as that we'll have a product or something in place in March of next year.
Okay. And I'll just ask you one last thing. Before the pandemic started, there was an Irish company that was going to start delivering pizzas by drones.
Yeah.
Have you guys had any consideration on air delivery or drone deliveries?
Well, we've looked at drone deliveries. I think we were the first to actually deliver something by drone. We delivered to Inish, what was it, Clare Island, sorry, we delivered across. Yeah. Now that was closed down the airspace. There was people on Clare Island, and there was people in Rona Pier, and they were both making sure that nothing crashed or nobody was hit. Yeah. But I think we've moved on a lot from there, and we are looking at product and project delivery on drones. Yeah. I think we hope to do an announcement soon on that, just to announce where we're going on that.
Well, listen, I think we've had some excellent contributions here from the guys, and if you want to speak to any of us afterwards, we'll be here for a little while. But I think we'll close the session and just show our appreciation for the speakers. thanks very much for attending.